call this meeting to order, and will you all please stand with me for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thanks. All right, are there any changes to the agenda? Okay, sorry, go on.
No, Marcia, I'll wait for do you want me to do the change to the consent agenda right now or just?
When we get there, that'd be fine.
Okay.
All right. So Nick, have you noticed whether or not Charlie's phone number is?
I'm not seeing any phone number at this time. I mean,
okay.
The phone numbers do go to the top typically because it's alphabetical. So if he does come in at some point, I'll be sure to patch him through.
Okay, great, thanks. All right, so we're gonna start off here with public comments. So if we can use the raised hand feature and allow public comments.
Yeah, I think the last meeting we had last week, we got a lot of really good feedback with just using the hand raise feature. So if we could try to stray away a little bit more from the chat and things like that and just purely go hand raise for now, that would be great.
I take it there's been no hands?
No, I haven't seen anything.
Okay, well, we have the second public comment towards the end. All right, so we'll go on to the superintendent report.
So we met very recently, actually. This past Wednesday, had an emergency board meeting, and today was our first day of remote learning for the next several weeks anyway. While we talk about remote learning, other things come along with that, such as making certain that our food service is continuing to go and that we provide the service for individuals to continue to come and pick up food if they so desire, or we deliver that food as well. And so Saturday, Nick actually sent a survey out to get the updated information on those who needed to have or wanted to have the delivery service. And so you can see some information right there on the screen that about 90 families, I think a little bit less than that, 84 here, and about 186 to 200 students are individuals who we want to develop delivery service for. Now, special thanks to our school bus company. Mark has all that information, and it's going to take him about a day and a half to get those routes all set up. But he will do that, and on Thursday, we'll start our first route. The routes will happen twice a week, Mondays and Thursdays, and on those days, there will be, like for instance, on Monday, we will have food, breakfast, and lunch for each individual who has asked for it for Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. And then on Thursday, they'll provide 4 days of meals. So that's Thursday and Friday and the weekend. And this service will continue to offer for individuals, and people can come on board and take advantage of this during this time frame. Just a reminder to anyone watching, but also, and if you're gonna, I don't know, talk to your friends or other people, other parents, just reminding them that the food at the school this year is, throughout the entire year, is at no cost to the families. So taking advantage of this is something that I hope many more people will do. Also supporting our families, we talked about at the Wednesday board meeting, is we know that there are some at-risk learners. And at risk can mean a variety of things. It can mean academically at risk, so social emotionally at risk. It can also mean that the resources aren't there, the supports aren't there at home for a variety of reasons. And so we have a committee that convened on this past Friday. They met, they discussed kind of what they envisioned supports could look like, anywhere from providing more hotspots, which we're currently working on, providing desks, for instance. Maybe some individuals at home, they have the space, they just don't have their own space. And so might we be able to provide desks or a desk and a chair or some things like that, you know, drive those over to the house on a bus. Or maybe there's some interactions that we need to have face-to-face, so in person. Are there ways that we can offer some some learning pods to be able to make sure that can happen, that's staffed, but follows the appropriate social distancing, and just to provide an adult to be able to monitor some of the online learning, the distance learning that is going on. A second meeting is going to take place tomorrow afternoon, or at least is scheduled, I believe, for 2:30 tomorrow afternoon. And so we'll know more after that. Just in general, because we're talking about this topic, the next time we meet as well, I believe the next board meeting we have officially anyway on the books is December 7th, and we'll be revisiting the decision to go remote. Keeping people updated as to what the status of the community relative to COVID, that's going to be something that we need to continuously do through emails, through constant continuous conversations from my office to homes, to the school board, to staff, just keeping everyone apprised of the situation. Certainly, people can go online and find out a lot of this information themselves, but just to kind of give an idea of why we take some of what we've done seriously, and a lot of schools are following suit and have followed suit as well, going to remote, or at least scheduling their remote time during this time frame. We, over the weekend, even though the website was down for the Department of Health and Human Services, it did come up today, but WMUR had reported that as of today, or as of yesterday really, there were 30 cases. That's a 10 case jump from the last time we talked in Ringe, and 10, which is a couple of new cases in Jaffrey, realizing that in a 14-day period, some of those other ones may have dropped off. It could have been higher. Now, that's steady growth, certainly, but I also just want to remind people of a different type of numbers story, in that we have Keene, for instance, who also is in Cheshire County. Their numbers impact our matrix, our decision-making matrix. But again, we could make the argument, well, all those cases are in Keene, they're not affecting us. But I wanted to just bring I went online, these are approximate numbers, they're not exact numbers, but there are approximately 5,000 plus a few hundred, 5,300 residents in Jaffrey, 6,000 more in Ringe. And then in Keene, there are about 23,000 individuals, a little bit more than that. And so seeing that Ringe has 30 cases and Keene has 30 cases, those aren't the same ratios, certainly. And so even though, all right, it looks like there are 30 cases here and 30 cases here, and the land mass is very similar, the number of people and the amount of spread is actually at a much higher percentage in our area. And so we want to keep, just keep those numbers in mind as we move forward, and encourage everyone that's listening. Certainly we'll continue to encourage people via email and other forms of communication to take the precautions that, especially during this holiday season, making sure that there's social distancing, that when you have an opportunity to wear a mask around other individuals, to do that, to eat in smaller gatherings if at all possible, and certainly with the family that you live with is a good idea, and maybe some other individuals that you know are taking the same precautions. And then making certain that we're practicing that good hygiene all the time. And so if we can continue to do that, then I think that these numbers can be reversed, and we can have a much different dialogue on the 7th. That is my hope.
All right. Any questions, comments for the superintendent?
Thank you,
All right.
Ruben.
Yeah, thanks, Ruben. Okay, so we're on now to the consent agenda. Heidi?
Okay. Yep, so I'd like to add a nomination for Anthony McDowell as the second shift custodian at DHS JRMS, full-time position starting on 11/30.
All right.
And I'd also like to pull the donation.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so adding the custodian, pulling the donations.
Yeah.
All right. So can I have a motion for the consent agenda with those adjustments?
I'll move.
Thank you, Laurel. And a second? Heidi?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. So because we're remote, I need to do a roll call vote. Charlie?
Aye.
Thank you, Charlie. Alicia?
Yes.
Thank you, Alicia. Patty?
Aye.
Thank you, Patty. John?
Aye.
Thank you, John. Heidi?
Aye.
Thank you, Heidi. Laurel?
Aye.
Thank you, Laurel. And I say aye as well. Okay. So we pulled the donation.
Yes,
Who is
Was-
it from?
it's from my husband and myself.
Oh, how lovely.
Well, he wanted to enjoy the program and use his stipend to give back.
Great.
Wow.
All right, so we're now going to do a vote on this. So I need a motion.
I move we accept this lovely donation.
Okay, thank you, Laurel. Can I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Alicia. And again, roll call vote. Charlie?
Aye.
Thank you, Alicia.
Yes.
Thank you, Patty.
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Laurel?
Aye.
I say aye. And Heidi?
I abstain.
You're abstained. Okay. All right, so that passes 601. Thank you, everyone. And thank you very much for the donation.
Our pleasure.
Okay, we're on to recognition.
Yes, so in 2018-19, we had a conversation, the school board, most people, actually I think at this very school board, myself, and we talked about what is the infrastructure that we really need, partly in a curriculum instruction and assessment area, but just an infrastructure that we need in general to move forward and to continue to be a school improving and wanting to innovate and become better and better for our teachers, for our staff, for our community, and for our learners, most importantly. And so in that discussion, we talked about providing people more professional development, more support, but we had done a lot of professional development in the years prior. We had hired substitutes so that we could do professional development during the school day, and sometimes we could and sometimes we couldn't. We did after school professional development. And it was very good. Many people gained a lot from that, but there was kind of a difficulty to get cohesion at times. And so we thought more and said, really we need good leadership, and not just leadership at the top in a sense of the superintendent or the school board, although I think that's very important, but we need leadership throughout the entire system. And it's not so much top and bottom, it's just, but through the system, we need to have strong leadership. That means we need strong leaders. And so we talked about, let's see if we can build a leadership academy. That was actually the phrase that was put forth. And so a little while later, I had some conversations with Keene State College and some Dr. Steve Begay, who will be talking here tonight in just a little while, and discussing the idea of building a cohort model where Keene State would provide learning or learning experiences to our teachers right here on our campus in a way that was meaningful to us as a district and specifically to each and individual teacher who was going to be part of this effort. That the learning was going to be bringing about current research, the learning was going to be about best practice, but also that it was able to be relatable or tied to the educator's world that he or she was currently in. So we put out the questionnaire and we said, hi, we are opening it up to, we're opening this 15 credit or 5 course graduate course experience, all to take place within 1 year. We're opening that up to staff and to the teachers, those who want to experience more for a variety of reasons. The district would pay for it. We use Title IIA funds, which are primarily used for professional development. We thought that it was the best use of those funds to use that professional development in a way that was going to hopefully inspire, but give a consistent approach to bringing a group of individuals together, learning together, bonding together, and viewing their learning through not only their own personal growth, but also what the possibilities were for this district. We have no really idea of what, you know, leadership needed to look like. It can look like a lot of different things in many different ways. But 30 plus individuals signed on to do this. And many went through a couple courses and for various reasons couldn't continue. But there were 23 individuals who, from the fall all the way throughout the summer, were dedicated and completed these 5 graduate courses. Now, for those of you who haven't taken courses in a while, that's a lot to do when you're not working. These individuals worked a full-time job as a teacher on top of that. So they did their teaching, and they went to their courses, and they did their reading at night, and they did their, you know, all their grading as well. So everything was all happening simultaneously. And on top of it, though we didn't really anticipate making this happen and making it that difficult, we decided to throw a pandemic into the mix, and that happened as well. So throughout all of these changes, courses had to be mobile, and I give Keene State credit. They had to mobilize and be flexible and become more flexible as well as a result of the pandemic. And everyone just came together and did a marvelous job and completed something I think was very special for this district, very special for this community, for our kids. I think hopefully very special for each individual who took those courses and bonded together as a group. Now, since then, we've obviously started this year, and this year has actually been really good. Largely, I think, because of the leadership of our teachers and the leadership of some other individuals as well, and working together. But we have individuals who have taken these 5 courses, completed them, and they are taking leadership roles. Some of them were already in some leadership roles in our school system, but they've become team leaders. Several of them have joined the Curriculum Instruction and Assessment District leadership team. They have become mentors. Maybe they haven't been mentors before, but they are now. And I think most importantly, they've become leaders or better leaders within their own class, or maybe even with their own colleagues in the same subject area. And so teacher leadership is not necessarily, designing lots of visionary planning or doing anything that necessarily is absolutely huge. It can just be doing a greater job of leadership with the learners that are in your own classroom, and that improves the system. And so tonight, I want to recognize, and I know that, again, Dr. Begay and one of the instructors who helped form this Leadership Academy and how it was all going to be structured, Dr. Peggy Wozniak, will be speaking after me and talking a little bit about the partnership that we have, the Leadership Academy, and then we'll recognize the 23 individuals, we'll name them, and we do have a certificate for them. Unfortunately, we're not in person like we had hoped, but we'll be making certain that that certificate is received or is given to each individual who completed this. It's also really neat to say that out of the 23, there are about 7 or 8 of them who have decided to continue their educational learning by working on either a postmaster's or a master's degree in ed leadership in some form or the other, maybe in the area of curriculum. And so I'm really proud of those individuals, and I know that they're continuing. It's kind of like they didn't have enough, hey, I think we'll do our job and then we'll take all these courses. And then afterwards, I think I liked it so much that, hey, I would do it again. So, right now I'd like to introduce Dr. Steve Begay to say a few words. And I believe Nick will have to make him a panelist.
Here. Still muted.
Hi, Steve. I got you muted here.
There we
There
go.
we go. How's that? Is that
There we
working?
go.
Hello, everybody. So back in 2017, Superintendent Duncan, along with a group of other superintendents, collaborated with Keene State College to envision what it would be like to build leadership capacity in the Southwest region of New Hampshire. And we created a consortium called the Regional School Leadership Consortium for the Southwest. Out of that consortium, we're working with individual districts on different types of initiatives and recruiting leadership talent in the whole region of New Hampshire. The Leadership Academy is the first, at Jaffrey Range, is the first significant activity of the consortium that kind of evolved out of all this work. So we're really excited about tonight being able to provide some congratulations to the participants to this, and really want to thank all of you here for the opportunity for Keene State to be here to do this, to recognize the accomplishments of these teaching faculty who completed the Leadership Academy. And as Ruben said, this was no small feat, given that, we're about halfway through the Leadership Academy and then the pandemic hit. And then we had to adjust all of what we did for our instruction for the Academy. So the instructors were amazing and the students were flexible, and we kind of worked through it all. So it was great and amazing just to watch everyone persevere through this. So it's my belief that really the development of leadership talent within a district is going to be essential to the future success of schools across the region. And it is my hope that this initiative here will contribute to your ongoing vision for student learning. And I had an opportunity to be a part of a strategic planning initiative. I don't know how long ago that was, maybe 3 years ago, 4 years ago. So the opportunity for us, for Keene State, to engage in that kind of a process through the Leadership Academy is really exciting for us here in our Ed Leadership program at Keene State. I'm hoping that ultimately What we're doing with this Leadership Academy will contribute to your strategic design that you've developed and also show improved outcomes for your students in the district. This positive relationship that has been developed between Keene State and Jaffrey Ringe Cooperative School District is truly a win-win for both, organizations. Jaffrey Ringe has been such a great supporter and partner with our ed prep programs over the years, and we really, really appreciate that. We appreciate the support of the boards and Superintendent Duncan's recognition that leadership development is critical to the long-term health and vitality of your schools. And ultimately, we're here today to really focus on congratulating the 23 students. And, as Superintendent Duncan said, we started with 30, and the 30 pretty much made it through until the summer. So we have a few that didn't finish our summer coursework because of a range of reasons, but 23 persevered and graduated from the academy, and we were really enthusiastic about the new cohort. And those students that didn't complete may be able to jump in for the courses in the new cohort and finish out this too. So it's not over for them if they want to get engaged. So we're really excited about this new cohort this fall. And, in closing here, I just want to really extend my thanks to all those who were involved with making this initiative a success. Peggy Wozniak is going to talk about that a little more, share a little bit more about our instructors, and just thanking the students, the Keene State faculty, the staff at the Southwest Center for Educator Support and Continuing Education at Keene State, and of course the Jaffrey Ringe administration for all the support. We will have certificates. So just want to let you know that there are certificates on their way to Superintendent Duncan for the that he has to sign, and then we'll make them available to all of the participants in the Leadership Academy. So those are on the way. Peggy, I just want to transition to Peggy Wozniak. Now she was hired by Keene State 2 years ago to work in our leadership program, and she was really excited about taking on a coordination role with the Leadership Academy. And she would like to share her insights into the project, share a little bit about our instructors, and talk about our students. So thank you so much.
Well, hi, and I apologize because my background somehow on this Zoom, I look a little like I'm coming from another world, and no, I'm not in Starbucks, but it didn't look like that earlier today. But it's a pleasure to join you tonight. I am a retired school superintendent, so it's been a while since I've been in a board meeting. I've been in a lot of them in 15 years as a superintendent, but never a virtual one. So this is a first for me in my career. But I am very excited about all of what's going on in your district, and it's been a pleasure to assist in coordinating this as well as co-teaching the first two classes. I want to commend Superintendent Duncan for his vision and passion for this and making this opportunity available to his staff, and also to commend you as the school board for supporting this effort. You truly are on the cutting edge of what we need to do to develop leadership. So as Superintendent Duncan said, we had 23 teachers in that first cohort complete all the coursework. Despite all of the challenges, they're really to be acknowledged for that. As Superintendent Duncan said earlier, not only obviously are they working full time, but they're taking all these courses, 5 in a year, and clicking into remote learning as quickly as they could when the pandemic hit. We actually have 9 who have gone on to matriculate at Keene State in either a master's or postmaster's educational leadership program, and 1 who matriculated into the curriculum and instruction master's degree program. So you have actually 10 from that cohort of 23 who are going on to complete further education at the college. That is quite an accomplishment. So we keep talking about 5 courses. Here's the 5 courses they completed. School leadership, staff selection, supervision and evaluation, curriculum theory and development, curriculum management and assessment, technology, and integrated teaching. That's quite a load for just 1 year. I want to acknowledge the instructors. I think some of them are able to join us tonight. They gave their time and their effort to make this first cohort a success. We all worked as a team, sharing ideas to develop this. And again, as Superintendent Duncan said, midstream, even those of us as the instructors had to switch our delivery system. I have taught blended learning before. I had never 100% gone virtual myself. So we all learned together, but we got through it and successfully. So I wanted to recognize each of the instructors, Richard Nanicelli, who taught with me in school leadership and staff selection, and Spencer taught that first curriculum class. Misty McBrarity taught the curriculum management and assessment class in the summer, and Mike Wakefield taught the technology class in the summer. And as you've heard, we have a second cohort. There are 9 in there. I am teaching the school leadership class with them as we speak, and the feedback in their weekly reflections is excellent and positive. They see the value for their own personal leadership. I think one thing we've done well in this academy, both the initial cohort that we honor tonight and now the new one, is we're demystifying what it means to be a leader. You don't have to be the superintendent or the school principal to be considered a leader. They are truly finding a leader within themselves, within the teacher ranks and within their classrooms. And that is just beneficial to your students and your school district. So I think I know I speak on behalf of all the instructors, that it's just been outstanding work on our part to be able to participate in this. And on behalf of all of them, I want to congratulate all of the graduates of the first cohort of the Leadership Academy tonight. I want to conclude my remarks by sharing a reflection from one of the students from this first cohort. And this student said, the most important thing I have learned this semester is that we have a lot of awesome people working in our district who are genuinely invested in the improvement of our district and the education of our children. I am so grateful for all of you. I think that kind of says it all and makes it worth all the time and effort and all of your support. You have a good group of staff behind you moving forward on behalf of the kids and Jeffrey Ringe. So on behalf of your instructors for this program, I want to congratulate and thank everyone. And I believe it goes back to Ruben now to acknowledge them by name, all those completers.
Thank you, Peggy. And just to say again, I see in the chat, Mike Wakefield, a shout out. He says, these teachers were great with an exclamation point, and I have to wholeheartedly agree. And so I'm going to read their names out. And again, I wish we were in person and we could, clap and recognize us and hand the certificates out. But know that there's no less celebration really here. That the words that were said by Dr. Begay and Dr. Wozniak are very true and very much. These teachers have added, and I believe will continue to add, great value to this district. Because of their hard work, their effort, and their vision to improve themselves and become stronger leaders. So the individuals who completed these 5 courses are as follows. Kim McCoyne, who is a Jaffrey Ringe Middle School teacher. Morgan Cooper from Jaffrey Grade School. Heather Dean, Ringe Memorial School. Amanda Dibble, Conant High School. Charlotte Elwell, Jaffrey Ringe Middle School. Ashley Flamino, Jaffrey Grade School. David Frazier. David Frazier was at the Ringe Memorial School when this was taking place, and he is now working for Student Services over here in the middle school, high school building. Sarah Graham, Jaffrey Ringe Middle School. Mark Haley, Jaffrey Ringe Middle School. Courtney Lambert, Ringe Memorial School. Tricia Layfield, during this time again, she was at Jaffrey Grade School and has taken on a role over at the central office in the student services area. Allison Marr, Ringe Memorial School. Caitlin McLaughlin, Ringe Memorial School. Wanda Mahar, Ringe Memorial School. Jenny Muskaskis, Jaffrey Ringe Middle School. James Norby, Jaffrey Ringe Middle School. Amanda Parsons, Jaffrey Ringe Middle School and Conant High School. Meg Perkins, Conant High School. Anne Marie Oshiak, Conant High School. Anna Rizzitano, Conant High School. Caitlin Shattuck, Jaffrey Ringe Middle School and Conant High School. Shauna Smith, Jaffrey Ringe Middle School. And Gretchen Booth-Thibault, Jaffrey Ringe Middle School and Conant High School. And so as you can see, we had quite a spread from all of our schools. And to me, that's part of the power of all of this learning and work that took place, as that creates a better bond from preschool all the way through our graduation. So again, thank you everyone, and enormous congratulations to all of you, and a thank you for dedicating yourself during this time.
Great. Great. All right, well, thanks. That was great to hear all those names of all those people, and the quote that was shared, and all the things that have taken place. That's great. And it's nice to hear that people are stepping into different roles and pursuing further education. That's great. So, all right. Thanks very much, everyone, for that. We're moving on now to discussion. The first thing up is our remote learning handbook. Thanks to our Keene State folks.
Thank you.
Okay, well, the Remote Learn Handbook, we've approved a version of it already. And what we did was we asked for some feedback, teachers and some support staff and some building leaders from the administration got together and made some adjustments to, I think, tighten things up with response from what teachers were saying that they needed, and also what some parents had indicated was perhaps a little loose in some areas. And so I'm not going to go through bullet by bullet. You've had this, I think, for the weekend, and certainly if you need a little more time to digest it, that's something that you can do. The themes really here are just improved communication, or at least better clarification of communication, a perhaps strengthening or making stricter the policy about attendance during remote learning. Some teachers had indicated that they felt that the attendance provisions were a little loose, and so we wanted to make sure that that was tightened up. And the last thing that of a major consequence would be what we would do during snow days. And so there is, if we go down to that one, because that one's probably the newest, the rest of it was more clarification, maybe strengthening the language. But the question is, what happens when there is a snow day? And so the committee put forth this idea. And I support this idea. I think it's good. I was not part of the committee who worked on this, but I think it makes a lot of sense. And it takes into consideration the fact that there, on snow days or inclement weather days, there are times when either we need to let the students be able to enjoy the outside a little bit during that time frame. Perhaps even the magic of sleeping in an hour or two just as you watch the snow outside your window and just kind of dream about what is out there, but really don't want to go out because it's freezing. You know, in some cases, the inclement weather can actually be so severe that it would wipe out any sort of internet connections and things of that nature. So in that, we would have a snow day. But we believe that certainly we can continue to have remote learning and have those days for the majority of them. And so basically the idea would be to put and implement an interim remote day for the district. And it's defined as an interim remote day will follow a delayed opening schedule. So a 2-hour delay. This would allow for the families to prepare for the day, to, if there's parents who need to make sure that they're helping their students get set up with their Chromebooks or other supplies or materials that they're needed, but at the same time, they've got to get to work and their cars are covered with snow or something of that nature. Maybe there needs to be some shoveling or some snow blowing. There's some time in there to allow for families to be able to handle the morning or the stresses of the morning. Excuse me, similarly, teachers who need to or feel that they need to come into the building in order to utilize the resources. There are individuals who like to do that and may feel the need to continue doing that. Maybe there's better internet reception over here or maybe another location. Would also give them the time to safely come into work, brush off their vehicles, do the necessary work that they need to in their own place to be able to get to work that day. There will be also just the idea that, you know, when teachers are working all day long, they get up in the morning, they get dressed, they start the day, and then afterwards, you know, like many people certainly have to come home to clearing their driveways and so forth. If they had an hour in the beginning of the day to be able to do that and not have to worry about that afterwards, that would be fantastic. And then, of course, giving the learners an opportunity, either, as I said before, to sleep in a little bit, but also be able to enjoy for those early risers the morning and just be able to have some time to play. So we believe that this accomplishes all of those. And so that's the summary of the changes made to this plan. And certainly if anyone wants to look at that, once this is approved, or whether it be today or whether it be the next time, certainly it would be great to, if it's non-controversial, to do that today. We'll be putting that up online tomorrow.
Okay, thanks. Any discussion then?
Yeah, it was Charlie. Can you hear me?
Yep, great, Charlie, go.
Okay, the way I read this, all right, the superintendent has the option of either staying remote for that day or giving the day off. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, so my question is, how is that announced and handled?
Sure.
In other
So
words,
if
I'm looking at it, if a parent has made provisions for doing remote learning at home, okay, and along comes a snow day, when will they know that there's no remote learning? At 4 o'clock in the morning, 6 o'clock in the morning? I mean, how can they schedule their day if you're going to have the option of, you know, doing it at the last minute?
Well, the idea of calling a snow day would not be, I mean, the goal would be to have a remote day. It would turn into a snow day or a inclement weather day if learning can't occur due to downed wires, other problems that are happening within the town that we find out.
Okay, I didn't see that when I read it. All right, if that's the intent.
That's the intent.
The intent then is to go remote on days at which the weather is bad because we don't have a transportation issue. But if we have another issue, like the propane issue at RMS or something like that, then you can basically say what? That it's going to be a remote day or a snow day. I mean, you're looking for something mechanical that might be causing a closing of a school, but they're remote anyway. So I guess I'm not understanding.
There are times when, like, we have an ice storm and snow is not usually an issue. But if there's a lot of ice, for instance, we can have downed wires, we can have communication problems, the internet can be out. We even had like heavy winds, the internet goes out and we find out that there's no internet coverage. I don't know if we can have school that day if we're relying upon that mechanism to work, to function. So there's different types of inclement weather, and some of it allows us to be able to maintain what we're doing, and others of it sometimes would indicate that, make it so that we couldn't.
So I, as a parent then, should plan on remote learning, snow or no snow, unless there's something like an ice storm or something like that.
And
which would
if that were the case, if we were to, find out that, we'll follow the weather like we normally do and look for the reports on WMUR and everything about the electricity going out or anything else that's happening, we'll make that we'll communicate in every which way we can. Obviously, if certain things, some people might not even get the communication if there's power outages right off the bat, but we'll do everything we possibly can as soon as we can to make sure that people are aware that there wouldn't be school that day. Okay.
That's good because, I want the parents to be able to plan as best they can. It's hard enough, the circumstances that they're under right now.
The planning would generally be a 2-hour delay remote day is what it would be.
Okay. We'll see how it goes. Thank you.
Thank you, Charlie. Laurel, did I see your hand go up? You're muted.
I was banging around in the kitchen. How does this work for the elementary schools who don't routinely take devices home?
Well, right now, they're already remote, so they have the devices home.
Right.
So if indeed we were in person, we would be looking at the weather reports and we'd be saying, it appears that tomorrow we may have inclement weather, we may have snow, it's a possibility. We will not have, it would normally be a snow day, for instance. And so we'd send that home with the learners. It's very similar in concept to what some schools have done in the past called blizzard bags. That's exactly how they handled it.
I understand.
Yeah.
So it means that you have to make the decision before learners leave for the day.
Yeah, so if we're back in person, we'd have to make the decision before going. Or at least the decision that it very well could be the case.
Okay.
Like it might not snow, the next day, and that's happened, and you're like, oh, let's go back into school. Yeah. So you wouldn't end up having that day.
All right, Patty?
I just want to say that 2 things. One, thank you for continuously updating this and rolling with questions and rolling with changes. And I hope it gets communicated out on a regular basis that updates have happened for parents. So
I think at this point, we're gonna have to print it out and keep one going on our refrigerator or something with the changes. But I also appreciate the humanity of the appreciating a snow day for what a snow day means for so many. And I think that a balance there is really critical, and God forbid we have an ice storm like we had in 08 or whatever that was, because on top of a pandemic, I don't think we're not going to talk about that.
No. All right, any other discussion? Thank you, Patty. All right, so let me ask the board, do we feel that we want to vote on this, or?
Is this the only change in this remote learning handbook?
No.
No, there was a couple other ones there. It was about communication, and then making the attendance when it's remote more strict.
So are we voting on each change separately or as a whole, I guess is my question.
Oh, I was thinking as a whole that we're gonna take these, you know, most of it was clarifications. It was just that bit about the snow days that was kind of the new bit.
Okay.
There is, you know, more language around web to school and people's responsibility. And I say people, I mean there's changes where there was a change in one area, like for here's what the teachers are responsible for. Then there was usually a parallel change with what are the students responsible for, what are the parents responsible for within that area. And so Patty brings up a great point, is that certainly if we make this adjustment right here tonight, and again, if you need time to read through it some more and you have more questions, we can, you know, we can act in accordance to what our policy is currently, and then, you know, change it later on, should we remain, you know, remote in that December 7th timeframe. I think that the attendance pieces here and the pieces having to do with the communication, like web to school and other forms of communication, are just good practice changes. And then, of course, wanting to make sure that we have the ability to do the snow day, remote day process. And anything that we do, that we change, I give a communication the next day. So I'll be sending out an email to everyone tomorrow with some links and some highlights on some areas that have been adjusted. And the schools do a really good job about, I think, updating their families as well on all the changes. Sometimes I feel like we've been putting out almost too much communication.
Nick, you had a comment?
Yeah, just as a general point, I don't know to what degree people have kind of followed along with the tail end pages of the remote, the district's framework, but anytime that we make a change, we date it and we put it at the bottom, just so that people are understanding of kind of the flow of some of these changes, kind of to Patty's point earlier. So all these pieces that are in yellow that are highlighted are the, you know, the new components, and there will be a note at the bottom of the document just signifying, you know, at least in a rough sense, like these portions have been added so that people have an understanding of the new pieces.
Okay. So board, do we want to sit with this for a couple weeks and vote on the 7th? Or are we ready to vote now?
So the question is, are we going to have any snow between here and December 7th?
I think the attendance is probably the more critical of that. I don't think it's going to snow till January, but I think we need to set standards about this right away. I feel like, or reiterate the standards for expectations of attendance.
Attendance and participation.
Yeah, I don't
I
think
think it would be fine to approve this, and if there are more changes needed, I bet we'll see him December 7th.
Do you want, as a board, to do that after public comment? Or do you, sometimes you take public comment, or do you want to just go forward? I know that we didn't have it as an action item, so I wasn't sure.
Oh,
I was
Go
going
on,
to say,
Patty.
I mean, the recommendations here are made by the administration, so or at least I believe so. So if this is what's needed in order to have a consistent class expectations and all of the other things, I think that's something the school sets as a standard.
Mm-hmm.
And what and we're responding to that request for consistency,
Mm-hmm.
policy wise, sort of.
Yep.
John?
Yeah, so I would say that, yeah, Ruben's idea I think is a good idea. At the very least, we should open the floor to public comments before we vote to accept it, just in case there are any.
Okay.
I think we're in a unique situation, and certainly while the school sets the standard, this is a very new thing. And in remote learning, parents are very highly involved in that as well. And I think it's worth giving them the opportunity at least to speak to any ideas that they might have about these changes.
Yep, that sounds fine. So since we didn't have any public comment earlier, place it here. So if we want to take a little bit of time there, Nick, and have people raise hands if they have comments that they'd like the board to hear regarding this.
Yeah, again, anybody who's online, you have a hand raise feature. Should be right on the bottom of your screen. If you want to make a public comment, just feel free to click that. We can address you. If you can just use first name, last name, and town of residence, appreciate it. All right, we do have one right now. Can we submit that?
Hi, Julie Cementa, Ringe resident, and I have a student at Ringe Memorial and the middle school. And I just wanted a quick question on the pickup patrol. I understand why we use it and for absences and just to monitor student health. Can we change the time that we have to put that information in now that especially the middle schoolers aren't starting till 8 o'clock? Right now, I have to have it in by 6:50. I know it seems silly, but it's an hour and 10 minutes before they even start class. So I don't know if there's a way to adjust that so we're not waking them up for no reason.
So I'll bring that. What I'll do, I mean, I actually can't answer that question at this point in time. But what I'll do is I'll bring that information to the principals tomorrow morning. I meet with them, and if I'm correct, you want to be able to modify the time when you insert information into pickup patrol. Now that school, in a sense, is starting a little bit later.
Correct. I mean, there's no travel time involved anymore, so.
Right.
Same with the elementary schools. I mean, I think they don't start till 8:30.
Yep, middle and elementary. Okay, I meet with both sets tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, are there any others?
Can I just ask if this is kind of out of the, are you talking about the health screening tool in Pickup Patrol or other changes that might need to be made? Because there's a couple different features.
I just got to pull her back in real quick.
Yeah.
No, just specifically, well, the health screening tool, because right now I keep getting alerts at, 6:50, I've got to answer these questions for my middle schooler. And don't get me wrong, but if he doesn't have to start till 8 and we're not really traveling anywhere, there's really no need to get him up.
Yeah, I think the middle school, high school starts at 7:35. But regardless, like you said, there's no travel involved. And so I think that we can adjust that, and it certainly makes sense. I'll talk to I'll talk to them tomorrow about that.
I know it sounds trivial, but
No,
just an extra
no,
few
it
minutes.
makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other hands? Any comments?
That was the only one we had, and nobody's raised it
Okay.
since.
May I ask a question?
Yeah.
So we're asking all students to continue health screening even though we're not in school, right? That's what it sounds like.
Yes.
And
Well, certainly what we're going to try to do is continue to provide information on our dashboards. A little bit harder now. In a couple of days, it's not going to be very accurate. But if students are, for instance, absent from school, they still can be absent due to illness. We need to have that information.
okay, but we are asking folks to do the COVID screening every morning.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we want to make sure that we're keeping everyone in a pattern
Okay.
as much as possible.
And that goes for staff as well?
Their staff screening, certainly anyone who's entering the building, and I actually just changed that screening tool up a little bit today to reflect travel. But staff needs to input that stuff into if they come into the building.
But not if
we are actually in the process of transitioning the staff one from our current Google form, and we're going to pick up patrol. That will be adjusted over the next few days.
Okay, so we're asking parents to continue with the screening, whether their children are in building or not, but not our staff.
The staff have another a mechanism to input absences and illnesses, and so to make sure that we are consistent with our students, just to keep people in a rhythm. Again, I can talk to the administrators tomorrow and find out if that's the absolute necessary thing to do during this time frame, but I think it was for the purpose of making sure that families were maintaining that consistency.
Well, isn't it also around the data collection for the dashboard?
Yes.
Absence.
That's really more where we were getting at, was the needing to know the absence and the reason for those absences, so that we could put it on the dashboard that indicated that students were not present due to illness. Teachers are a little bit of a different story when we're in remote learning.
Right, and we do, like you said, still have the data on absences through, is it ASOP?
We have an ASOP system, yeah.
Yeah. Okay,
But
so
are you merging those together to see how COVID is impacting our little community?
I guess I don't understand the question.
Our
Are
school.
you talking about merging the ASOP?
Right. If
the ASOP information is just.
It seems to me that it would be a good idea to understand the symptoms of our school community for everyone associated with it. Maybe
I see your point. So definitely, we are alerted if there are situations that would of COVID, for instance. So we have that information, and also any illness that is going to cause professional staff to not be able to perform their duties during that time frame. So staff impact, we would have that information. Yes.
okay. All good?
Yes, thank you.
Great. Back to, are we gonna vote on this tonight, knowing that, you know, there may be some changes in the future that we need to make? My sense was, once we heard any comments, then we would probably be ready to do that.
Okay, I will say that there is a parent, it looks like, who wrote in a concern that maybe makes some sense. I'd be happy to read it if you like.
Sure.
So everyone hears it. Please consider the new attendance policy carefully. This is not allowing for parents to have flexibility on how they complete work during a given day. Parents need to work and should not have to choose between feeding their child and educating their child. If a family makes an effort to attend morning meeting and is completing the work, then they should be marked as present. Expecting a 6-year-old child to be online 4 times a day, 4 days a week is a large burden during a pandemic. Thank you. That is from Bruce Ferris. I'm not sure what town Mr. Ferris lives in.
Ringe. All right, thoughts?
Can we, Ruben, could you just look, can we look at the attendance? I can look at it.
Nick's in charge of that, right? Nick?
Yeah.
And Heidi, well, Nick's
Yeah.
bringing that. Did you want to comment?
I just wanted to see, again, in the document, what the elementary,
Right.
read it through before, but I wanted to see kind of what we're expecting of our elementary students.
I mean, the thing with some of the attendance pieces is it's not, you know, the section that I just had it on before was the kind of major point, but there's kind of a couple different areas that it's addressed. You know, like right here, you know, we're talking about participation, assigned in their entirety, participate in discussions, informing of absences.
Well, if we go back up, so let's take a look at because the first stuff has to do with, there you go. So expectations for learners. Students will also be, so elementary learners will have 2 daily whole group lessons with a classroom teacher and scheduled small group 1-to-1 sessions. You'll be expected to participate in at least 1 whole group lesson as well as all scheduled small group sessions. So that part was already in place and hasn't been altered. Now, what the change was here for elementary was students will also be scheduled for specials, such as art, PE, music, technology perhaps, and are expected to participate in those as well. So equating the importance of the arts and other activities to other aspects of the curriculum.
Ruben, do you have a good idea then of what, you know, sort of a snapshot of the day? So they have, they need to go to one of those 2 sessions. So the student might go in the morning, and then how many small group sessions would they log on for? And then they possibly, or then they need to log on for their special. So throughout the day, do you have an idea of the timing of all of these times they would be logging on?
There are four separate Zoom meetings. There's one right off in the morning, another in the mid-morning, another in the early afternoon, and then two following that. So there are 4 to 5 Zoom meetings because my kids are in the elementary school. So they are all scheduled. I don't know if that kind of sheds any light on that. I can totally understand how that would be very challenging for families. I also know that teachers are doing a lot of direct instruction during that time, and so I just don't really have a good understanding of what other option there is. And that's what makes this so hard.
Yeah.
I feel for you.
Unless there is an adult to maintain the schedule. Well, that's why we're talking about supports, right?
Mm-hmm.
At-risk
That is
students.
what we're talking about, you know, in the process of talking about supports.
Okay.
Because what we do find is that those who are in attendance and those who are not in attendance, the gap gets larger and larger and larger and larger. And the idea is we want to be able to have understanding there needs to be some flexibility, but have some absolutes around the expectations of learning. Certainly we know that there are students who have had difficulty learning through this time frame. Back in March, I mean, these regulations were made to tighten up some of that, both at the middle school, high school level, as well as the elementary level. But the goal is to make certain that each learner gets what he or she needs, and that, like I said, that the gaps don't increase, if at all possible, during this time frame.
Okay, thank you.
John?
Well, it sounds like the objective here is not to penalize students or think of it as truancy, but to identify students who need the support so that they can get a real education out of this remote time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do we need then more time to look at how this is worded? I mean, it sounds like the snow policy is something that maybe we should put into effect. I don't know, maybe all of it, but.
I think that, what we want to vote on is what's in yellow. And right. I'm not sure that what's in yellow is that controversial. I think we've adopted all the other pieces, and, having an expectation that the students have materials ready to when class begins, that they participate in class discussion, check with their school mail,
check their mail.
All of that stuff seems perfectly reasonable and was what parents wanted us to lay down last spring. So I'm not sure that what's in yellow is that controversial. I think it's just overall, it's a major adjustment, and today is day one of a major adjustment.
Well, I think like anything, it takes time to adapt, and this will be no different, and we just have to keep on communicating and supporting.
And I think, again, all of this is new, and it seems not totally new, but we have to keep constantly trying to improve or change. So if something in here isn't working, we'll start to hear that it's not working, or we'd like to hear it's not working, and then we should figure out how to adapt. So I guess I support going with this, and then recognizing that it is very likely to need some revising at a future date.
Yeah, I think that the key to all of our response to COVID has been that whole notion of flexibility and responding to whatever new information comes to light. And I think I agree with you, Patty. What's in yellow is not, I don't think, controversial.
I guess I have maybe a little bit of a different perspective. I am a parent of that 6-year-old, so I get it. Like my heart is just breaking for you, because you are on with that kiddo the whole time. And if you also need to be at work at that same time, I can totally see how being restricted to getting your kid into those Zoom meetings at a very scheduled time is really burdensome. And so I don't know what the answer is. I agree that we need expectations, and we need a general consensus for where we're heading with this, but we also need to remember that some of these parents didn't choose remote learning. They chose in-person learning, and remote learning has happened because of circumstances outside of all of our control. And I think that we just have really such a responsibility to those families, especially to figure out how we can problem solve and support them in this. I think that the pods that we're talking about are a really great idea. And I think that we really need to focus our attention there as we move forward. So I don't know. I guess I don't really know. I agree with you, Patty, to an extent. I think there needs to be maybe a level of understanding here for those families where that need is really, really there.
Yeah, and I think what you're talking about also is information for the ad hoc group that is looking at what risks are our students facing and how can we support them.
Yeah, I think that's a good way of looking at it. There's two things. You know, one, it's a good way of looking at it in that here's some expectations. You know, teachers also need to know that when they're online and they're working with these students, that they're actually there, that they're present, that they're participating and so forth to the best of their ability, so that teaching and learning does actually take place. Then the other piece is, yeah, how do we make that happen? How do we support those where this would be difficult, where the expectations are difficult? And so when I communicate tomorrow, if we do choose to go with these changes tonight, you know, what I would put in some of my my email to families would be that I would encourage parents to reach out and communicate any concerns to teachers and the building principals, and work there. You know, there's always exceptions to situations, and so we try to, you know, our whole strategic design is about personalizing learning for our kids, and so we're in a situation where, you know, it gets more, in some ways, a little bit harder. In other ways, remote provides a little bit of more ability to even personalize, but we know that different families have different circumstances, and so how do we personalize so that it works for that family?
I think if we can offer that sort of, not a disclaimer, but just urge people, if it is difficult for them, or if they're struggling with a piece of this change, to reach out and really voice that. I think that I could support that if we pass that message along with these changes.
I agree with that as well. And I think, you know, it's hard to know how many people are feeling this in that way. There might be many more than I might think there are. So that's important. And if it's not a huge number, then can we make adaptations for those, you know, folks that need it, and it won't be as big of an undertaking as if we have really large numbers of families that are having a hard time balancing work and having their kids learning at home. So I just feel like it's really important to kind of hear from everyone who's having a hard time with this to let us know what's going on.
Yep. Okay, any other discussion? Yeah. All right, then it sounds like, with the caveat that we've just talked about, we'd like to put this in place. So I would need an action, a motion.
I'll make a motion that we accept the changes to our remote learning handbook, with the understanding that we communicate to our families that we would like their feedback if there are any things they're struggling with.
Yeah, and that we take that into consideration and, yeah, may change it again. Patty?
Second.
Thank you. All right, roll call vote. Charlie?
Yes.
Thank you. Alicia?
Yes.
Thank you. John? You're muted, John.
Yes.
Thank you. Patty?
Yes.
Thank you. Heidi?
Yes.
Thank you. Laurel?
Yes.
Thank you. And I say yes as well. So that carries 7-0-0.
I just want
Okay.
to thank those who worked on the adjustments of this. Several teachers, many of whom have been actually experiencing the online teaching all fall long. They've started that way and obviously are remaining that way, and so they've had some great insight. And then also Jen Horn, who led the effort.
Good. Yeah, thanks. All right, so next we have up the winter co-curriculars.
All right, so I'm just gonna add in Heather and David real quick. So I have Heather should be in.
She's in.
And looks like David's almost in.
Yep, David's muted.
Looks like everybody's
There we go.
in. Here we go.
So good evening. David Springfield and I have put together even more in-depth stipulations, ideas and stuff, building off of what we came up with this fall. I will say that I thought, for the most part, we had a very successful fall season. During this whole time, all of our sports did very well. But in addition to that, our other co-curriculars and activities have gone up since last year, be it all kinds of different things from Nintendo to Dungeons and Dragons to even our volleyball moving up and our numbers increasing. So based on feedback, things that we saw this fall, and Dave's communication with all the other athletic directors that we will be working with again in the winter as we did with the fall, we've come up with kind of best practices for Jaffrey Ringe and what we think is in the best interest, our coaches, our student athletes, our fan base, our parents, and those kind of things. So certainly I think everybody wants to know, and the biggest thing is obviously that we're a little bit more flexible with outdoors, and when our athletes were on the playing field of not wearing masks, but certainly as we've moved indoors and current situations, our recommendation is that for everything that everybody always be wearing a mask. So while we're on the basketball court running up and down, I think the only team that wouldn't be wearing a mask while actually doing something is we can't mandate that of our swimmers. So you can't swim with a mask. Well, I guess you could, and you could have a snorkel, but we're going to try to stay away from that. But other than that, we would be participating with the mask and making sure everything is on the up and up. We've spoken with John LeClaire, the facilities manager, about the timing of when students are in the building for practices, be it in the Pratt, be it in our fitness center, or in what we call the old exercise room, which is obviously the S cafeteria. We've talked to them. We've asked John and his staff to get more wipes. Also, we'd have the little spray guns and those kind of things. Our coaches would be responsible for making sure that their area is cleaned, wiped down, from doorknobs to basketballs to anything that they touch frequently, so that we can have the smooth transition for the next program to come in. But also recognizing that our time frame would allow for the custodian staff to at least have 2 hours in the building, and hopefully, obviously the priority at the end of their shift or their night, if everybody is out of a building by 8 o'clock, so they'd have from 8 to 10
predominantly to finish with the gyms in the bathrooms at the end of the evenings. So that's kind of where we're at with that. So we've gone through pretty much that. I think one of the other bigger questions would be about fan base. For the Pratt, we're still looking at, but we hope to be able to stream. But we have measured out the seating capacity. We'd love to be able to offer 2 seats per student athlete that's participating for their families. We've broken up the Pratt and we've done it via 8 feet. Understanding that we're asking that those 2 that would be visiting or be there as spectators, they would be kind of a unit. So they would take up about 3 feet. Those 2 people, just so you can kind of visualize it, they would have their 2 seats, and then we've gone from those 2 seats to the next 2 seats being 8 feet away, both in a direction of across the bleachers and down. With that, we're talking about that we can definitely seat about 44, and depending on how much space we want to use on the stage, we might be able to get a few more in that respect though too. So, and again, as far as busing, the same stipulations that we had for the fall, restrictive of the numbers, never stopping to get food, always facing forward, our student athletes always wearing masks, the coaches always wearing masks. So the same stipulations, and Dave can speak more on what teams that we're going to play, but again, you know, restricting the teams along this area and staying within the fact that most bus trips wouldn't be over 30 minutes, so keeping those short. The season, as everybody knows, is going to be cut a little shorter than it has been in the past, but that's an NHIAA kind of thing, that you can make your own schedules. You'd still make the playoffs if you played 0 games, but certainly that's not in the best interest of our student athletes. So we put this together. Hopefully we've answered all the questions going forward.
I have a question.
Sure.
Okay.
Wait, I have a question.
Okay, but I'm taking the first hand, which was, so. Yes, Laurel.
Hello?
You can't see.
Take Charlie's question.
Charlie, yes, go ahead.
Okay. You had this sample schedule as the last slide, I believe. And
Yes.
you have different time frames set out. And you have a requirement for the coaches to do all this cleaning and stuff.
Yep.
Are they going to schedule their sessions for, like, instead of an hour and a half to maybe an hour and 15 minutes, and then spend the last 15 minutes cleaning up before the next group comes in? Or is the last group going to do the cleaning up?
Nope, every team will, yeah, go ahead.
I can speak to that. So I did it the other day. I went in with a custodian with a spray gun and basically kind of mimicked what it would be like. And from doing the balls to the bleachers to all the bleachers, it's basically just walking along and spraying. It took less than 5 minutes to clean the areas that would need to be cleaned after a practice. So it isn't a major undertaking. It's actually fairly simple once you get the routine down and you show the coaches how to do it.
But Charlie, you're right that it would be within their time, and after every team has gone through. So once our boys varsity have finished their practice, it would be on the boys varsity coaching staff to clean, sanitize, and then turn the gym over to the next group. The next group which would come in would be girls varsity, same thing. Coach Troy and they would do the same thing. They'll do their cleaning before another group comes in. So they're responsible for that, for the basketballs, any areas. So again, David said, like, we're making sure that our coaches, book bags and those kind of things are set on these bleachers so that you're minimizing space as well, so they know exactly what spaces they're going to clean and those kind of things and change out. So yes, every coach and their team, before they leave, so if it's the last 5-10 minutes, they're responsible, change out. And so each team would be doing that. And then the final cleaning, there'll be an extra 2 hours at the end though for the custodial staff to do the last 2 hours of cleaning that and the bathrooms. Our coaches, again, will be, if they've sat on the bleachers, spraying down the bleachers, obviously they're going to use basketballs. Any handles, doorknobs, like leading outside the Pratt and those kind of things. And we're going to minimize the time that that they would use the locker rooms and stuff. Mostly they'll be using the locker rooms primarily just for games.
Okay, Ruben, is there a custodial checklist of what to do?
Well, yes, and we've talked to John LeClaire, facilities, so he's on board with working with us too and making sure that his staff know what's going on and what the timeframes are. Yes.
Okay, because it needs to apply to all locations,
Yep.
not just Pratt and where they're practicing basketball. We've got cheerleading going on, we've got ice hockey going on, we've got all kinds of sports going on, so it's not just basketball.
Correct.
But if there's a checklist for the coaches that says, I did this, and they can turn it over to the next coach, then I guess that meets our standards.
Yep. Well, it's going to be the same thing, Charlie, like with our winter track. He'll know the same thing, same protocol for cleaning up all the stuff in the fitness center and those kind of things. So yes. And again, we spaced out the track. Winter track will be using the cafeteria as well as our cheerleading. So each of those coaches will know what's going on and their time frames. And again, same thing of where they're exiting, the doors that they're going to leave. And facilities will also know like which bathrooms that they would have probably used prior to leaving the building as well.
Thank you.
Yep. Laurel?
A couple questions. So do we have custodial staff in the building on Saturdays and Sundays?
On Saturdays, there's the big cleaning crew that comes in on Wednesdays and Saturdays. And they're usually there. We've talked to John from 10 to 6 so that, and on Saturdays, if you looked at it, it says developmental. We thought we had really good success. Dave Springfield and I talked, we kind of tried it with the field hockey, and we had JGS and RMS sign up for 4th and 5th graders sign up for field hockey just to try it and to give them an activity on a Wednesday, which obviously is the remote day. Because we're the only ones using the facilities, we are trying to work with the school principals from JGS and RMS, and we're going to try to recruit and do a developmental thing for the youth. So our 3rd, 4th, 5th graders, our younger group, because they don't otherwise have any activities because they used to sign up through the rec department and they used to use the Pratt. So now we're going to try to work on that and see if that goes. So yes, there would be a crew in there on Saturdays. Coaches again would be in charge of cleaning it. The Sunday though, we don't have anything, so that would be on the coaches. Mostly our coaches are our varsity teams. It's usually boys varsity and girls varsity on Sundays, if they so choose to use the facility on Sundays, which they normally do.
Okay.
Patty? You're muted, dear.
So on Sunday, so the Sunday the 13th, the only cleaning that's going to happen is what the coaches would normally do.
Correct. Until the next day.
Okay, so is it sort of scheduled that the custodians do their thing with the locker room and the bathrooms before students are in the Pratt, or?
So on Sundays, we usually at the most would have 2 teams practice, and the coaches would be responsible. They would only use the Pratt in the locker rooms, and they would just have to spray down that area. That would be it. The rest of the school isn't used. So it would just be their normal cleaning. Plus, the boys usually don't use the locker room. The girls tend to use the locker room more for practices. So it'd be a little more cleaning, but it's not major cleaning if shown how to do it. When I was shown, I was very impressed how easily you can disinfect.
And also the ventilation systems are coordinated with this schedule?
I would have to check with John on that, but I assume that the ventilation, I would check obviously before, but that the ventilation would still be working on the weekends, you know, especially on, you know.
Well, we have some special regulation or not, guidelines we're following with respect to ventilation, and I don't want us to be assuming, okay?
Well, I said I would ask.
Thank you. Will the cheer squads be in the Pratt during games?
Yes.
Because
With
that was not discussed 2 weeks ago when you gave your presentation. All those numbers are worked out? And do they get to invite parents also?
No. So basically we would, again, that's a great question. I felt it was unfair not to have the cheer squad in there, as they work every day at practice, and they won't have any tournaments this year probably. So their excitement is coming to the games. So we would have to look at the numbers again and probably redo some of the numbers and, you know, to make that work. But I feel it's only fair to have the cheerleaders there as they're part of everything. They're no different than the basketball players that are wearing masks and competing with each other on the court. I don't feel that it's a danger, but the fans, Laurel's a good question. We'd definitely have to work that out.
Okay. And will swim meets simply be between 2 schools and not more than 2 schools coming together this year?
They're
I'm not even sure if swim meets will happen. I know that the Clark Memorial is allowing swimmers to be there, and they are not allowing any swim meets though. So any swim meet would have to be virtual, have to be remote, and it would have to be, you know, Julie Whittemore, who's going to be our coach, runs the swim Sharks team there at the Clark. She's done some remote meets already where you basically swim. They take the times of all your swimmers, another school swims, take the times of their swimmers, and that's how you would compete. So yeah, if it happened, it would be between two teams. But I don't even know if that's going to happen. We're pretty lucky. We get to use a pool through the YMCA. A lot of the other schools use colleges and different. So I'm not even sure if that will happen right now. I hope it does, but there's a lot still up in the air.
Okay.
Because it's just based on times, it's like the way they're hosting it is like a virtual road race too. So you have your swims times, and then you're just competing in that respect. Yes.
So it's like robotics.
You got it. Yes.
Honor system to a certain extent.
Correct. Yep.
Okay. Last question is about ice hockey. Will we be participating this year?
We will be participating this year. I've been in contact with John Rittenauer, who's the athletic director at Conval, and we discussed how they're running their sports compared to how if we were approved to run our sports. And he and I have both spoken and agreed that they are perfectly fine with us coming up with our own guidelines and participating in their sports, that they have no jurisdiction over how we do things, but they're perfectly fine with us participating. And it would, you know, when it all starts.
But as far as hockey goes, there's so many restrictions set up by the governor, and everything got started November 6th. For that, even, you know, even as every student athlete will have to go online, submit the screening even before they can get into a hockey rink. So you already have to have your Q code, your little scan thing. Hopefully everybody can do that, or their coach has to take their temp and then submit to the rink prior to even getting into the rink. So Keene has everything, all their guidelines that we are gonna have to follow up on their website as far as Keene Ice is where we would be skating this year. Because Winchendon, there's no availability. They're not obviously letting people on their campus. So we'd be at Keene Ice. So our students would have to submit that, and we'd have to follow all the guidelines and regulations that are already set up by the governor for the facility of ice hockey. And again, even when they're skating though, they'd be wearing masks. And so they'll be wearing masks on benches, in locker rooms, and on the ice. But again, even just as an individual, if you wanted to walk in, you have to be screened and get the Q code prior to even getting in.
Okay.
Patty?
I'm sorry I missed the first presentation 2 weeks ago, but this was really clear and concise, and I appreciate that very much. I'm just a little curious about visiting, the visiting team spectators, and I think
Not allowed.
they're not allowed. Okay, I might have missed that bullet. I'm sorry about that.
Nope.
Well, that will answer my other concern, but I think having a pile of masks at the door for visitors is not visitors, but our parents, if they forget or something like that, is going to be essential. And I know we have it, so if we could have it handy, that'd be great.
They will be screened. Parents will be screened, temperature checked at the door. We'll have masks. Everything will be, just so.
With the parents and stuff, we're gonna have basically a comp list of who that student would invite as well, so that when they come in, there'll be a list, so whoever's checking them in would know who they're there for. As far as that, Dave and I are also gonna create the seating chart for the Pratt, so those families will know exactly where they're seated every time too.
I really
like having their own box.
Like having their own box, but that way would know exactly who it is, what it is, where their space is, so there's no questions about where they're moving to and moving around. So whoever wants to select those names of the families out of the hat, so we can do that chart, that would be wonderful.
I really appreciate the detail that you guys have taken and the extent. I know the number one goal is to keep the kids playing and active and healthy, mind and body. So I appreciate that. I just really hope that they have a full season. They deserve a full season.
Thank you.
Great.
John?
John? Looks like he froze.
Looks like he's frozen. So this is titled co-curricular, but it's pretty sport centric. Is volleyball club going through the winter?
No. I guess it's there. If you look at the schedule, we have activities from 2:15 to 3:20. We're trying to use the Pratt as much as possible for other things, international sports, floorball. The only problem right now, Laurel, is just confirming with advisors too, but if we knew that everybody was approving of the rules and stuff like that, then the same things would apply. If there was an advisor running floorball, they would have to clean after and still allow for the students to play. So right now too, with co-curriculars, we're working on those advisors that might want to still be in person, but I'm also working on different ways of figuring out how we can run them remotely as well.
Okay. If it's happening in person, then the students have to get to the school at 2:15. Isn't school running until
2?
Till 2?
Well, yeah, they're always dismissed by 2. So from between 2:15, from 2:15-ish, yes. Yep.
All right.
We found the same thing. Just so you know, there was no problem. We had made it about gave people about 20 minutes, a half hour, and there didn't seem to be a problem when they had to get from based on the signups for the field hockey and getting to the field. And we held it at lower field. So we had parents bringing their students from Ringe and Jaffrey, and the timetable kind of worked out. So seemed to work.
Right.
And that was on a remote, that was a test because we did it on a remote Wednesday.
So John.
Okay, hi. Heather, do I understand that now basketball players even will be wearing masks during games and practices as well?
Yes.
And in the weight room as well?
Yes.
Okay, great. I just wanted to also, I guess, echo what I think Charlie said earlier about cleaning procedures and having a checklist. I know it can be done quickly, and I think that's great, but it would be good, since you have a lot of different coaches, to be as explicit as possible on what should be done.
Yeah, I will meet with them, John. I will meet with them, and I'll create an Excel sheet, so basically they have a checklist. They did their ball, they did the balls, did everything. So it's right there. And then the next coach comes in so we can trace it to see. But good idea.
Okay, great.
Heidi.
So I have 2 questions. So if our numbers remain not good and we remain in remote learning, it sounds like there's still the thought that that sports and co-curriculars will happen. Am I understanding that correctly?
I hope so.
I hope, yes.
And then last time, David, when you came, we wondered if other districts at that time, we talked about masks, and there was no certainty around whether they would be worn in games. I'm glad to hear that they will be, but are all districts, do you know, adhering to the same policy? Or if they come visit us, I would hope.
Yeah, so if someone comes to visit us, they have to do what we do. So if they come to visit us, they have to wear masks when they compete against us. But we also would require that when we go compete against them, that they wear masks. So the athletic directors that I'm working with right now, all of the local athletic directors, there's about 7 of them. We all understand what's at stake here, and we're all going to make sure that we come up with one policy. The fall was a little shaky, like you talked about, with the fans, home fans away. We're just going to make sure we clean up all those mistakes and make sure that we're all on the same page when we compete.
Okay, thank you. And I guess I'm just concerned about cheerleading. I don't want to put them aside from any other group, but the loud, we know that certainly speaking loudly and is one of the high-risk activities. So I guess I'm just really curious about what that will look like in practices, and also if they're at the games. And I guess I just have a concern about that. And
yeah, you have to remember that these teams spend so much time together. They're screened consistently every day. They're told, if you're feeling ill, don't come to practice. So there's always that chance. You can never be perfect, but basketball players are breathing hard on each other. Even though they have masks on, they're exchanging, banging into each other. We're just hoping that all the screening that takes place will make sure that we don't have a problem with someone. And the masks, the cheerleaders are basically, they do yell, but they're just kind of yelling out. And with the masks, I just feel like it would be safe. And it would be hard for me, and I understand, to tell the cheerleaders, look, the basketball players can sit next to each other on the bench, talk to each other, play on the court, and then the cheerleaders can't stand and cheer with masks on during the games. I don't really feel like that poses too much of a threat. That's just my take on it, though. I understand your concern. And I respect that, but I believe we have a lot of things in place that reduce those risks.
okay. And I guess the other thing would be, when athletes are working hard. I do imagine their masks are going to get wet, and I guess I would like to just see preparation and education piece around perhaps they need to have multiple masks with them, but take very good precautions to remove their dirty mask. And, you know, I can imagine if your mask is soaking wet and you want to put on a new one, but like, let's really make sure that we have good practices around that, and that people come prepared with a way to, you know, that they come prepared with enough masks, but also a way to put their dirty mask safely inside a bag, inside their own bag. So
we have talked about it. And it's on our cheat sheet that we put together. We just didn't highlight it because it's a cost, but we are looking into purchasing them as part of the uniform for our teams because they will be sweating so much. We have talked about, and we are securing the throwawayables for the same reason that we've found, like in the weight room, that we've had to have them in there because kids do sweat when they're lifting and those kind of things. So we will have the backup masks as well. And we are going to make sure that we have a team mask as in addition to. So for those reasons too, like after they've sweated and worked out in practice, that they would be using that only as their team, then have their other masks that maybe, you know, they've been wearing, that they would normally wear to school. So yes, we are going to educate them on those kind of things and what coming up with what they need. I think as everybody knows, it is going to come down to an individual understanding themselves. Some of us sweat a lot. Some people don't sweat as much, but you're absolutely right. So I think somebody already said it, would have backup masks though in the gym for our student athletes. We'll have them obviously if somebody actually tried to come to the game as a spectator and didn't have one, but more for our, you're right, our student athletes, and making sure that they have enough. And in the different rooms, be it if it's down in the cafeteria during their practices, in the weight room, or the fitness center, and in the craft. So yes, absolutely.
All right. Any other questions? All right. So I apologize. I had to move because I missed the first bit of the presentation. There was so much static I couldn't hear anything. But it's been resolved now. So
I make a motion that we accept the winter sports co-curricular framework for regarding COVID, period.
okay, thank you, Patty. Ruben.
Could I just offer a suggestion on a change to that motion, that we don't technically have a framework yet on that, but that we would utilize that this concept and the items that we're putting in here with the feedback that we've had tonight, that we would go and that we have an understanding to move forward, but also that we would be putting together in writing for formal approval, even just if it's a couple pages to attach as an addendum to the framework.
Okay. Okay.
So we
would
maybe Nick, you have a better suggestion.
Yeah, so I think that it's great if the board wants to move forward and approve that this is okay. I know that there are certain deadlines for the winter season that are coming up, at least for the skills and drills type practicing, to get some basic things, you know, up and going toward the end of November. And obviously our formal season would start, you know, mid-January. I think the goal would be that we'd take the discussion had tonight, take the PowerPoint that was put up, that, you know, Heather and David worked on, we distill it into some sort of guidebook similar to the things that we've done for, you know, remote learning and others. So we would have kind of a sports guidebook that we work with, and then, you know, we can present that formally at the December 7th meeting. And then also, obviously if anything changes between now and then, I know that, Heather and David are talking with athletic directors, looking at NHIAA standards. There's been certain things that have come down from the state. So we can really just kind of take what we have, add to it, and then try to get some approval next meeting. And then the same with all our other documents, just with the understanding that, things need to be flexible, and if things have to change, we can always make adjustments as things move forward.
I would like to also see, I guess, some more information regarding the other clubs. I mean, drama has historically been a huge draw, and how are we going to move forward with that? And what space are they going to be allocated, and how is that going to work? And all the other clubs, and in the elementary schools, are there going to be after-school clubs?
Yeah.
That are, the walking club, the art club, all the stuff, right, that occupies children after school.
And Heather can talk about it. We're trying to also make sure that the majority of clubs can be done remotely, as we understand that travel from here and there and all over the place is not the easiest for many. So Heather, you might have more update on that.
Well, like similar to same thing, Laurel, I think it's just a little different knowing who the coaches are. And again, like drama has started. It's going to right now move to remote as far as right now, because that's what the advisors feel they're going to do. And again, I think that's why I said it's co-curriculars, and it's geared on athletics, but the same kind of framework of what would be transpiring as far as right now you guys are extending the time of how late the building can be open. But drama, has been going till 4:30 in person. Right now they're gonna switch over a little bit, go to remote. So still in contact with all the advisors and how they're going to do it. Again, similar to getting different software for Dungeons and Dragons so that they can do remote. And again, it's more about what the comfort level is of our advisors and making those adjustments as it comes. No different.
For the elementary learners, Heather, am I correct in saying that we were going to be working on implementing?
So I was getting to that. So, we've got animation coming into the elementary. We have book publishing for the elementary, but some of the things that we've done and worked on is getting the software so that if it is remote, they can have those clubs. But as soon as we can get back in person, they can transition back into person. So we are working with all those things. I think it's more about for the clubs and those kind of things, understanding the same thing. Like, if we're proving that athletics can get into a building, then I'm assuming that you're telling me that if an advisor feels comfortable having their students come back into the building, that we can adjust their schedule. So based on what you were just saying about is 2:15 too quick a turnaround to get to the Pratt to do something in the Pratt, if drama decides that they want to come back, then can they be in the building from 3 to 4:30 again, or 3 to 5? So those are the kind of things. So I think kind of part of this is the school board and everybody approving the cleaning, the process, the working with the facilities and the custodial staff to make sure that areas are clean, and then it's a comfort level for our advisors to do that. As far as athletics, we've already kind of gotten the approval or talked to coaches and have hired coaches that feel comfortable with hosting in-person practices.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay. So the general consensus I think that I'm hearing is we're taking all this, and hopefully by the 7th, we'll have something that we can do in action.
Well, I mean, I guess in action though too, but I mean, Laurel brings up a good point so that as I can move forward, I would like to hear that you feel comfortable that we can, or not, and I guess that is the question, in certain situations, have the building start to open for certain areas, I guess is my question.
I would ask that we approve the concepts that we've outlined tonight.
Okay.
We understand that we need to, as John and Charlie have alluded to, making sure that we have protocols in place that are clear.
Yep.
So moving forward, and that people are trained on those protocols to make sure that they actually happen. And then, you know, that anything that has been put, that we've talked about here tonight, the suggestions that the board has really agreed upon, as well as what has been presented, we'll put that in that handbook, and sort of there should be no surprises for the 7th.
So,
Okay.
And I mean, the calendar we've received about using the Pratt for all this starts on December 13. And I suspect you'd want to start earlier if you could.
yeah, that was just a schedule of what the basic outline of when this actual season starts, what it will look like. On December 14th is when the NHIA says you can officially start practices for winter sports, but November 30th is the time that the NHIA gives to start unofficial workouts, where you basically can take your group, do certain skills and drills, and get them ready so they're not going into it cold on December 14th, because everything is shortened now. So it would be great if we could, if November, for my personal reasons for sports, if November 30th was the time, that would work well for sports, for us.
Right, and the sooner that you're saying about activities, and if we all wanted to say, talk about the 30th, that would be good.
Okay. So we need to revise the motion.
I'm not sure what I'm revising because I am
Yeah.
in favor of the whole thing. So
Well, they need to, what do we need? We need something that says that the direction they're going in, the protocols that they're outlining, we're finding acceptable, and to progress in that with that so that they can get things started. And by the 7th, we'll have something that we can add to the framework.
During this time of remote, that we could have some in-person instruction via, for clubs, activities, and sports. And if we wanted to put a start date of November 30th, that would be.
Ruben,
So
I
I think you're,
think we have to hear from your ad hoc committee before we make that kind of
Okay.
commitment. I don't know.
Charlie, do you have something?
yeah, I was just saying that I think what we need to do is just say that we accept the winter co-curriculars in principle.
Okay.
Right, and what we've been presented with tonight is a calendar that starts on December 13th.
Yeah, I'd like it to start for activities and sports right now. I mean, if we could immediately, but obviously November 30th is when the NHIA officially starts it for all the other schools. I'd like to keep our kids active consistently, like we've been doing a great job, and I'd rather have it not stop at all and just continue with the activities for the kids. But I understand you can't always have it my way.
Well, and I mean, for an example, you know, I'm waiting to hear from different advisors. So like Magic the Gathering has got 14 students that love Magic the Gathering, which those numbers have doubled since last year when we kind of started it. And we're climbing up until the Friday. We closed on Friday, the Friday before. So, and they were still climbing. So it's hard for me because the activities, Laurel, as you brought up, have been moving. And so now just because we're in remote, it's like, okay, you know, do we stop them? You know, so that's kind of the problem. And yes, I can try to move them to remote, but certainly if they could do it in person, they would prefer to.
Sure.
I think Charlie's motion is really good, that we
Right.
accept the co-curricular, extracurricular concept, or I think he used a different word, but
Principal.
principle,
In principle.
and charge the administration to develop a written set of guidance that is consistent with what was presented tonight, as well as reflects the feedback that has been provided by the board,
Second.
having to do with cleaning.
Okay, so we have a motion from Charlie and a second from Patty. So I need a roll call vote. Laurel?
Aye.
Thank you. Heidi?
Aye.
Thank you, Patty.
Aye.
Thank you, Alicia.
Yes.
Thank you, John.
Aye.
Thank you, Charlie.
Yes.
And I say aye. So that's 700. And I think, we need to also, like you said, look at what the ad hoc group comes up with so that we have consistency. Consistency is key. I talked with folks at Primex today. Consistency is key. So, okay, great. Thank you both for your time and continued efforts at this.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
All right. School board and district administration.
So just briefly, I mean, there's not a whole lot to say at this point in time, other than I'm looking for some time for us to have some time together to continue on with our conversation around school board goals, or the goal specifically of having a 5-year implementation plan. And so I'll be sending out sometimes to you individually, just trying to, probably a doodle poll to find out some afternoons, either Monday or Thursdays, to be able to start some of those conversations, to plan how we're going to be collaborative in our process and make sure that we are getting this goal complete by the end of this year.
All right.
But for our administrators, Mondays and Thursdays in the afternoons seem to be good times. Maybe, not right after school. I'm talking about like when you're available.
Right. And this is continuing on from what we had started this summer.
Yes, this past summer. Yep.
Yeah.
Terrific.
Yeah. We said we were going to try and do it in August, and then other things happened.
So it's a little bit overdue, and so now that we're in a little bit of a different schedule again, trying to capitalize on any positive part of
Yeah.
Where
what opportunities are we provided?
Yeah.
Okay. Is there any discussion on any of that, or just something to look forward to?
Something to look forward to.
All right, so we're on to our action item. The Ringe Memorial School parking lot tree work, another opportunity.
Do we have to act on this?
Well, I thought we already
had
approved this. I think it's more, it is happening, it's an action, but it's really just information for us.
So where's the funding coming from, Ruben? Is this coming from the warrant article for parking lots?
I believe it's the warrant article having to do with parking lots.
Okay, so the board doesn't have to approve the expenditure. The board might be interested to know that it will cost about $15,500 to have all of the trees 2 diameters and larger removed from the land between the current parking lot and the Historical Society, basically to the property line. into the street. And also some trees behind the modulars.
And the trees in the properties, for the removal of that's for the purpose of setting up another step at some point.
Right.
Is,
once the large trees are removed, the next step is to have that area grubbed and graded, and then a gravel asphalt, reclaimed asphalt parking lot laid down, similar to what was done in front of the garage on Stratton Road.
Right.
So we have an appointment with the Ringe Planning Board for tomorrow. We are on their agenda for after they approve their meeting minutes. That's at 7 p.m.
Is that face-to-face or remote?
I think it's face-to-face.
Okay.
Where are they holding it?
Well, you know, their calendar's not really clear on whether it's remote or face-to-face, to be honest.
Well, if they're holding at the rec center, it's probably going to be face-to-face. Because they spread everybody out 6 feet apart.
Okay. So I think.
But if you have it tomorrow night, you should know where to go.
That's true. I'll be sure to find out. I would say that I don't think we should start the work until after we present to the Ringe Planning Board.
Yeah. But that's been moved up, right? Because we were going to have that done over, was it Christmas break? And now
it was
because.
definitely originally planned for the end of December, and the possibility of starting sooner is there now.
The possibility is that it could happen before December 7th, provided that noise does not disrupt what activities are happening at RMS, right?
Okay. All right. Next up, board committees, and Laurel, why don't you keep going there with facilities?
Just a sec. Okay, it is at the Ringe Recreation Building, 283 Wellington Road. Okay, that's the Ringe Planning Board meeting. So the Facilities Committee met on Friday. We discussed security camera work. All cameras that need to be replaced because they don't function well, or added because we don't have coverage. That work is being done this month and will be totally complete by December 15th. I was very happy to learn that. Other topics discussed were our architect. The first site visit is, and walkthrough will be this Wednesday afternoon from 1 to 5. We heard about the RMS parking lot at Jeffrey Grade School. Work is being planned to remove fences, do some grading, add fences at the lot where the house was, because that has turned into an outdoor classroom. And we want fencing to keep children from running out onto Charlone Street. And adding a remotely activated gate at the busway, which is a pretty big ticket item. The plan is afoot for that. I suspect that construction can't happen until the next building season, or we won't be able to repair the driveway. What am I missing, Marcia?
Just that we are, we're working with some individuals in the town to get an RFQ together for parking lots, just to kind of see what it is we can do in a more economical way than perhaps maybe what we've tried to do in the past.
Nice.
Ruben, correct me if I'm wrong, but aren't we're putting out an RFQ to do full depth reconstruction of the middle school, high school paved areas?
Yes, well, so whether it be all together or, you know, chunk by chunk, that along with the JGS, that was the idea, to kind of replace in kind, but with full depth reconstruction. And certainly RMS would look a little bit different. Some of the work that's already being planned is obviously the tree work that we're talking about, and you described everything that was going to happen in that area. The full depth, the work would not necessarily need to be done in the RMS parking lot.
Right, an overlay there would probably be sufficient for the next few years.
Yeah.
Our chairperson, Marcia, has been working with our electrician on the building trades project, and students have been working in the building doing prep work for the electrician, which is pretty terrific. I hope that they can continue their in-person work shortly.
Yeah.
I'm actually I was informed today that we had I'll just say we had another company that was doing some work out there that had to come back and redo some stuff because it wasn't quite what we had expected. And the learners were the ones who picked that up and thought it was, you know, a little bit off from what they had thought.
Good.
Yeah.
Outdoor propane piping.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. Our forester has prepared our maintenance plan for the Route 202 property and is recommending some work for this summer, followed by a maintenance program to maintain the health of the timber. I would urge administration in any way possible to make that report available to science teachers and students or Envirothon folks. It's pretty interesting reading. And that is pretty much it.
Patty?
Laurel, do you think that it's possible that are we thinking we're going to sell the timber? Is there some way that we can start a, one of those woodshed programs where if we have quality wood that's cut, like that community members can take it if they need it in the winter? I don't know, they have those in different communities, and even though it won't be till next year, it'd be nice to do something with the wood that's cut down.
So like the tops, tree tops.
Something, I don't know, just something useful with it.
Well, the timber pays for the work to return this lot to health.
Oh.
Pretty much the first maintenance part.
Okay.
We can look at that. To be honest, I was really hoping that we could get someone interested in saying, let's cut down the wood, let's get some of it milled, like have a site mill that our building trades would use to build their projects, but it's too hard to pull that all together.
Okay.
All right. Next was policy.
Yeah, so policy met on the 12th. We worked after some board suggestion to revisit policy BHC. We decided not to recommend any changes and discussed how policy KEB clarifies any questions related to bringing matters to the board attention. We also clarified policy JCA, so you can look for those changes at our next meeting. We added some language to define what the best interest of students is referring to. We did review and revise a few other J policies as well that will be on the next agenda.
Okay. John?
Yes, so the question that I had raised last month on policy BHC was, simply whether or not, if the staff does request that communication be brought to the board, is it understood or is it an expectation that the superintendent will pass any such communication to the board? And so I guess what I'm hearing you say is that that's what the policy does say, or maybe not. I don't want to put words in your mouth. Is that what you're saying?
So the committee feels that between policy BHC and KEB, the process for bringing any concerns to the board level is addressed between those two policies.
Okay, so I guess in reading this, the way I read it then is that if somebody, a staff person, let's say a principal or supervisor or a teacher or other staff member, does submit something through the superintendent for the board's consideration, that they can expect that we will in fact receive that. I don't feel like it's that clear, but maybe it is. Or I don't know, maybe I'm misinterpreting. And I read was this was brought to us by the Education Association as a concern. And I don't have a problem with not changing it, but I was interested in clarifying what exactly the policy says in terms of what people can expect if something is if they follow the procedure and go through the superintendent.
And Charlie, were you trying to say something there?
Yeah, basically it's if they submit something to the board through the superintendent and the superintendent doesn't want to send it to the board, my expectation is that he talks to that person and explains why. And there is a complaint process about the district administration. And if the complaint is about the superintendent, those complaints would have to go to him first, but then they can be escalated to the board, and the board can act on them or not, depending on whether they want to. But I see those as probably the only two scenarios. One is you expect something that you send through the superintendent to the board to go to the board, and if not, then the superintendent will explain why. And then if you still want to get something to the board, in spite of the superintendent, then you have a complaint about the superintendent, and you can bring that to the board. So, I mean, there are multiple ways of for example, a teacher's got multiple ways of getting to the board, one of which is through the grievance process, if they have a reason for a grievance. So I think the policy stands on its own, because the purpose of this policy is to have, if anyone in the district has an issue, that they escalate it to their next highest authority, which eventually would get to the superintendent. And after that, the board. So I guess everything's based on that policy, allows the superintendent to control it, which he should.
Right, and the policy describes the process by which that happens.
Well, I think that's reasonable. I hope the minutes will reflect that. I think what I'm hearing you say is that, the policy does start out saying we want to maintain open channels of communication, but certainly it does seem reasonable that if the superintendent has a reason not to feel something should be brought to the board, that, he would explain that, and presumably that explanation would be adequate. And I can envision multiple scenarios where someone a staff person might want to send something to the board, but it might not be well advised. And the superintendent explaining that could certainly help the staff person to understand that. On the other hand, if a group wants to, or a group or an individual wants something to come to the board, and we say, do it through the superintendent, and the superintendent feels that's not necessary, then I guess what we're saying is then the next step is a grievance procedure. So, okay.
Well, not necessarily a grievance.
Appeal.
Oh, okay.
Because if you look at the complaints about administration, there's a policy on complaints about administration, which basically says it has to go through the superintendent. And if the superintendent doesn't resolve the issue, then they can come to the board and request a meeting with the board.
But I was going to say, don't confuse that with grievance, because that's specific to contract.
Correct. A grievance is specific to contract, but a complaint is not.
Right.
Necessarily.
Okay, so the terminology is complaint. So someone could bring a complaint to the board.
That's correct, and there's a policy that allows that to happen.
And that policy is.
Actually, there's two. One is complaints from the public, and the second one is complaints about the administration.
Mm-hmm.
You know, just for clarification, I wasn't even thinking of this in terms of a complaint necessarily, although I guess you're saying if somebody wants something to come to the board and the superintendent feels that's still advised, then that would be the complaint. Is that what, in other words, a difference?
If they don't accept, if the superintendent said it was ill-advised and they still wanted to do that, and their superintendent refused to do that, then they have a complaint that they can bring to the board.
Right, okay. And Alicia, you said that there are two different policies that deal with the complaint and how a complaint comes to the board. Is that right?
I said that.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
Charlie said there are two. I referenced KEB specifically, which is, I believe, I don't have it in front of me.
Sure.
When a staff person would like to bring forward a complaint. So that policy describes the process through which that would happen.
Okay, great. Thank you.
All right, anything else for the policy?
I think Patty's raising.
Patty, you're muted, hon.
All right. I just wanted to state that it's also true in the reverse. As board members, if we felt the need to communicate to a staff or administrator, we go through the superintendent. And in that way, he may have just heard the same thing from another board member, and it just kind of coalesces the conversation to the administrator or to the teacher or staff member. So this is a collaborative policy, and that it goes both ways, and that an administrator isn't going to get peppered with questions from a board member or from board members, and vice versa. So I think it's supposed to be mutually beneficial, I think, is the intent.
Yes.
Well stated, Patty.
Okay, any other questions for the policy? All right, then. Moving on. Sorry, my when I had to move, I forgot my agenda. I think it's board matters was next, and then
Public comment.
We have public comments too.
oh, that's right, we have public comments yet. Okay, so let's take care of that. Public comments. I know we did some earlier, what it was a specific thing, but if there's still anyone.
You already have one person with the hand raised.
They don't.
So Aaron.
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hi, Erin from Joffrey. I just, I know it's very late and I'm sorry, but you guys didn't discuss the athletic training that you accepted $10,000 for sports. You didn't discuss it at all, and it was in your consent agenda. I just was curious if that was just for winter sports. Is that for basketball? Is that for all sports? I just would have liked a little bit more information on that. And I did try to click on that link on the school board agenda, and it brought me up to Heidi's donation each time that you clicked on it for soccer. So there was nothing for me to see.
Yeah, that was an issue with the agenda. My apologies. It has since been fixed.
Okay. So does anybody have,
The concept of the, yeah, so right now it's for winter sports. The idea is to try this out. This is something actually the school district has been talking about for quite some time. Most school districts have athletic trainers during the sports seasons. We have not done that. We do have some savings in some areas like transportation. Well, it's right there, right? Transportation of athletics, and have a pretty good deal with an individual over at the hospital in Peterborough. And so there's an MOU that we can sign to try this out. This is something I think they typically, they've denied us in the past. We've had a very difficult time trying to find a reasonably priced situation for this type of service. But due to the pandemic, this has been made available, and we wanted to give it a shot to see the benefits to this, to see if this is something we want to be putting into a budget later on, or whether we can cover this type of job or responsibility that we have for our students' wellness during these time frames in a different way.
So is that just during games, Ruben?
Gosh, I don't think it's just during games. I think that we have it during some practices as well. But I'd have to, I'd have to get back to you, or have David or Heather get back to you on that specific topic. That answer, I don't have that answer in front of me.
Yeah, I was hoping there might be a quick chance for public comments during that sports presentation as well, because I had one other kind of question that wasn't really brought up either. I don't know if anybody thought about it, but they were presenting how, they've spaced out the 2 spectators per player for each game. Typically JV games and varsity games are back to back with each other. So would JV parents be asked to leave the gym and then it would be cleaned, and then varsity parents would come in? That was just my other question that I would have liked to have had the chance to ask when they were on the meeting as well.
Sure, well, that's a great question. And I think that we can put that question to them to address within our planning.
Yeah, if you
yeah,
want
Nick, you may have already had this conversation.
Yes, I was speaking with both Heather and David earlier today, and when you're talking about the 44 people in attendance, that takes into account taking a boys JV and a boys varsity team, taking the total number of students or student athletes on both of those teams. You wouldn't have more than the 44 in that case. So you wouldn't be having JV spectators sitting on seats, and then having varsity parents and families come in and sitting on those same seats. You'd be able to space it in an appropriate way, where you wouldn't have to worry as much about that. And Heather actually is still on the meeting, so I could patch her in if she's got more to say beyond what I just.
No, I mean,
I do think the cleaning question is a good question to ask and to address in in cleaning protocols for in between games.
All right. Well, you can ask her and get back to me. I don't want you. It's way too late and it's been on too long. So
yeah, no, we'll get back
thoughts.
to you on Nick. Do you have both of those questions? Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Yep.
All right, so the only other person at this time that had their hands raised was Heather Lindstad, but I think she was more just trying to respond to the questions at hand. So again, whether we want to allow her a chance to speak, to maybe answer some of those or not, is up to the board, I suppose.
Did we lose Marcia?
Yes, it does appear that Marcia dropped out.
Okay.
Charlie, you in charge?
I think we can rely on Ruben and Heather to get back to Erin with her concerns and to incorporate some of those concerns into the plan that we'll see December 7th.
I think that's the best avenue to take.
Great. Charlie, do you want to take over command?
What happened? Marcia drop off?
Marcia has, we've lost Marcia.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah, she just sent me a text message that said that her computer just froze up and she was kicked out. So I don't know if it worked.
Okay, so do we have any board matters?
No, sir, not here.
Okay, going. Future items is update on technology plan. And the last item is up to you guys.
One thing I would say with respect to the technology plan, I don't know where you are with it, but that might be an opportunity for some of those grant funds.
Yeah.
For some of
we have to see if we can we have to shift some stuff around if it's possible.
Okay.
And just an update on the technology plan. By December we will have the audit.
Great.
Yep. The results.
Thank you.
I make a motion that we adjourn.
Thank you.
Who made the motion?
It was Patty.
Patty. Who's second?
I will.
We all
Alicia.
did.
Okay. We are stand adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Good night, everyone.
Good night, everybody.